Oh, darlings, imagine if Tinder had existed in the dusty wilds of 1850s Australia. Swipe right on a bearded bushranger with a horse and a habit for highway robbery, only to discover his shocking secrets involve more than just stealing gold. We're talking effeminate outlaws batting eyelashes at their mates, cross-dressing convicts turning the bush into a scandalous soiree, and a women's shortage so dire it had blokes eyeing each other like modern-day bros at a music festival after too many beers. Buckle up, because the Australian bushranger era's bedroom antics make today's reality TV look like a nun's tea party. If this tale of down-under debauchery has you gasping like a Regency debutante at her first ball, smash that subscribe button faster than a bushranger fleeing the troopers. Tell me in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from and what ungodly hour it is there, because nothing says historical gossip like sharing your midnight confessions. Ah, my scandal-loving listeners, gather round as if we're huddled over a forbidden pamphlet in some dimly lit London drawing room, whispering about the latest tarn indiscretion. But oh no, we're not in stuffy old England with its powdered wigs and polite adulteries. We're plunging headfirst into the sun-baked, lawless scrub of colonial Australia, circa 1850 to 1880, where the bushrangers roamed like wolves in sheep's clothing, or perhaps more aptly, wolves in petticoats. These weren't your garden variety highwaymen, no sir. They were the original bad boys of the Antipodes, galloping through eucalyptus groves, pistols blazing, hearts and loins aflame with desires that would make even the most jaded Regency rake blush. And shocking? Darling, shocking doesn't begin to cover it. We're talking a cocktail of desperation, deviance, and downright delicious irony, served with a side of modern comparisons that'll have you chuckling into your chai latte. Let's set the scene, shall we? Picture the gold rush fever gripping Victoria and New South Wales like a lover's feverish embrace. Thousands of hopefuls flooding in, mostly men, scrabbling for nuggets in the dirt, while the fairer sex remained woefully outnumbered. Whispers from the era's scandal sheets, or what passed for them in those ramshackle colonies, paint a picture of a male-to-female ratio so lopsided it was like a modern-day tech conference. Blokes everywhere, hormones raging, and nary a lady in sight unless she was charging by the hour. This women's shortage woe, as one historian so quaintly put it, turned the bush into a veritable pressure cooker of pent-up passions. Effeminate outlaws? Cross-dressing colonists? Oh yes, my dears, the lines between mateship and something steamier blurred faster than a kangaroo in a dust storm. Take, for instance, the infamous Captain Moonlight, Andrew George Scott to his mother, but to the scandalmongers, a figure straight out of a Gothic romance gone wildly off the rails. This dashing Irish engineer turned outlaw didn't just rob banks and gold escorts. No, he wove a web of romantic intrigue that would rival any Byronic hero. But here's the juicy bit. His deepest affections weren't for some buxom barmaid, but for his fellow bushranger James Nesbitt. Gossip from the prison yards of Pentridge whispers that their liaison began behind bars, Nesbitt sneaking tea and trinkets to Moonlight like a Regency suitor sending billet-doux. Upon release, they shacked up in Melbourne's Fitzroy, living as one in heart and soul, as Moonlight himself penned in letters that could melt the ink off the page. Imagine it, two rugged outlaws sharing a bedroll under the stars, their mateship veering into territory that today's Grindr users would recognize all too well. But oh, the irony. In an era where sodomy was a hanging offense, though rarely enforced unless you were caught with your trousers down, quite literally, these bush boys flaunted their bond with the subtlety of a fireworks display. During the infamous Wantabadgery siege of 1879, when their gang held hostages at a station near Gundagai, Nesbitt took a fatal bullet. Moonlight, in a scene ripped from a tragic opera, cradled his dying paramour, weeping, kissing him passionately, and declaring him his only dear friend. He even fashioned a ring from Nesbitt's hair to wear to the gallows. Talk about a macabre memento mori. And his final wish? To be buried beside his beloved. a request granted only in 1995, when modern sensibilities finally caught up. If that's not a Regency-level scandal, two outlaws in love defying the noose and societal norms, then I don't know what is. Compare it to today's celebrity couples splashing their dramas on Instagram. Moonlight and Nesbitt were the original queer icons, their story buried under layers of just good mates euphemisms. Of course, not all Bushranger bedroom tales were so poetically romantic. Enter the darker underbelly, where desperation bred deviance that would shock even the most worldly gossip. With women as rare as an honest politician, some turned to what the pamphlets delicately called unnatural acts. Sodomy convictions dotted the court records like flies on a carcass. Prisons like Norfolk Island saw men pairing off as man and wife, complete with jealousy-fueled brawls that rivaled any drawing room duel. One account from the 1840s describes female convicts in Tasmania engaging in nailing, a euphemism for same-sex dalliances that had the wardens clutching their pearls. And in the all-male gold camps, whispers abound of shared swags leading to more than just shared dreams. It's ironic, isn't it? These hyper-masculine bushmen, paragons of the Australian legend, tough, independent, beer-swilling archetypes, secretly navigating desires that today's toxic masculinity would decry as unmanly. Think of it as the 19th century version of a bromance gone viral on TikTok, but with higher stakes and fewer filters. Then there's the proliferation of prostitution, that evergreen scandal of empire. The gold rushes turned sleepy towns into dens of iniquity, brothels sprouting like mushrooms after rain. In Melbourne and the diggings, women, often convicts or immigrants down on their luck, charged exorbitant rates for their company, turning the gender imbalance into a booming business. Bushrangers, ever the opportunists, weren't above dipping into this well, robbing hotels that doubled as bawdy houses, or, gossip has it, partaking in the services themselves. Take the Clark brothers, those bloodthirsty siblings from Braidwood. Their exploits included terrorizing communities, but between holdups, they surely frequented the sly grog shanties where ladies of the night plied their trade. And Aboriginal women? The pamphlets barely touch on this, but the irony is bitter. Dispossessed by colonists, many were coerced into trading sex for goods, a far cry from pre-colonial customs of wife exchange. It's like colonialism's version of OnlyFans, but without the consent or the payouts, shocking in its exploitation, yet swept under the historical rug. Don't get me started on the outright villains, like Thomas Jeffries, the cannibal bushranger, whose appetites extended beyond mere flesh-eating. This monster raped multiple women during his rampages, including convict escapes where he forced himself on captives in the bush. Irony alert, in a land romanticized for its
effeminate bushrangers add another layer of wit to this tapestry. Cross-dressing wasn't just for the stage. In the colonies, it blurred lines in ways that would delight a Regency satirist. One bushranger gang in Queensland threw all-male parties with sequins and butterfly wings. Imagine that, outlaws prancing like debutantes at Almack's. And passing women? Marianne Bugg, the Warimi woman who rode with Captain Thunderbolt, defied gender norms by dressing as a man for heists. Her story a gossipy gem of empowerment amid oppression. Venereal diseases ran rampant, a scandalous souvenir of these liaisons, syphilis scarring the landscape like the pox on a rake's nose. Pamphlets warned of lock hospitals, where infected women were detained, a hypocritical nod to public health while ignoring the men's role. It's all so delightfully ironic, a society built on convict labor preaching morality, yet turning a blind eye to the bush's bacchanalia. So there you have it, folks, the Bushranger bedroom basics, where love, lust, and larceny danced a wicked waltz. But hold on to your saddles, because next time we'll dive deeper into the cross-dressing capers and cannibalistic conquests that make this era's scandals positively devourable. Darlings, if you thought Bushranger love was all brooding glances and stolen kisses under the stars, wait until you hear about the frocks, the frills, and the outright monsters who turned the outback into a Regency nightmare of cross-dressing capers and cannibalistic cravings. These Antipodean outlaws didn't just rob coaches, they subverted every gender norm and moral boundary, making today's drag brunches look positively prim. Oh, my deliciously depraved darlings, welcome back to our salacious soiree through the scandalous underbelly of the Australian Bushranger era. Last time, we dipped our toes into the desperate desires fueled by that pesky women shortage, effeminate fellows flirting in the scrub, Moonlight's tragic romance with Nesbit that could out-queer any modern rom-com. But now, prepare yourselves for the cross-dressing capers and cannibalistic conquests that elevate this era's scandals to pure pamphlet-worthy pandemonium. It's like a Regency ball gone bush, frocks amid the firearms, irony thicker than a gold nugget, and horrors that would make even the most debauched rake retch into his reticule. Let's commence with the gender-bending gallantry, shall we? In an era where masculinity meant mustaches, muskets, and mastering the horse, some bushrangers gleefully gallivanted in garb that would shock Almac's patronesses. Take the dashing Captain Thunderbolt, Frederick Ward, the gentleman bushranger who evaded capture longer than any other, roaming New South Wales for nearly 7 years. But the real star of his saga? His paramour, Mary Ann Bugg, a proud Warimi woman of extraordinary grit and guile. Educated in Sydney, expert horsewoman, bush navigator extraordinaire, Mary Ann didn't just ride alongside her captain, she dressed the part. Court records from 1866 reveal that while living rough in the bush, she donned men's pants, boots, shirt, jacket, and hat, striding like a strapping young lad at a time when women in trousers were rarer than an honest squatter. Practical? Utterly. Easier for riding astride and evading troopers. But oh, the irony. In a hyper-masculine world of outlaws, here's a woman outmanning the men, scouting, sourcing food, and taunting police like a tigress when they dared apprehend her heavily pregnant self. She proclaimed herself the captain's lady, yet blurred those lines so deliciously that modern feminists would toast her with a sly grog shanty. Compare it to today's gender-fluid fashionistas. Mary Ann was the original.
And cross-dressing wasn't confined to the ladies passing as lads. Whispers from the gold fields and jails hint at bushranger gangs indulging in frolics that would delight a satirical pamphlet. Though solid accounts of sequin soirees in Queensland prove elusive, perhaps swept under the colonial carpet, the Kelly gang itself sparked endless gossip. After their Glenrowan last stand in 1880, ashes revealed what some swore was a lady's bonnet, leading scandal sheets to speculate that young Steve Hart, the slenderest and most effeminate of the quartet, donned dresses for reconnaissance or, heavens forbid, personal penchant. Modern historians dismiss it as a misread fly veil on a man's hat, but the rumor persisted, fueling novels like Peter Carey's where the Kellys prance in petticoats as part of secret societies. Irony abounds. These armored icons of Aussie machismo, romanticized as beer-swilling blokes, secretly, or not, subverting the very manhood they embodied. It's like discovering your favorite footy hero moonlights in musical theater. Shocking then, sensational now. But enough frivolity, let's plunge into the darker depths, where bushranging devours its own morality. Enter Thomas Jeffries, the monster of Van Diemen's Land, whose 1820s atrocities prefigure our Gold Rush era's shadows, but echo its excesses. This cannibal convict escaped, robbed, murdered, and worse. Joining briefly with gentleman bushranger Matthew Brady, who booted him out, calling him a dehumanized monster for his depravities, Jeffries kidnapped women, assaulted them, dashed an infant's brains against a tree when it slowed his flight, then, ghastly, cannibalized a gangmate for sustenance. Contemporary reports scream of sexual crimes so vile, even hardened outlaws recoiled. Though some modern accounts caution against sensational inflation, the core horrors stand. A predator whose appetites extended to flesh in every sense. Compared to today's true crime pod obsessives, Jeffries was the colonial cannibal king, reminding us that not all bushrangers were folk heroes.
Some were outright abominations, exploiting the lawless bush for unspeakable ends. The gold rush amplified such shadows. With wealth portable and women scarce, prostitution boomed, venereal diseases ravaged, and coercion of Aboriginal women became a bitter undercurrent.
Darlings, welcome once more to our deliciously debauched dive into the Bushranger era's most titillating tales. We frolicked through forbidden loves, cross-dressing capers, and cannibal horrors. Now let's gallop into the glittering heart of it all. The gold escort heists and gentlemanly gallantries that transformed mere thievery into a high society spectacle of wit, charm, and cheeky irony. Picture it as a Regency highway robbery with Antipodean flair. Pistols pointed politely, victims treated to tea and sympathy, and the outlaws riding off not just richer, but with reputations as romantic rogues that would make any scandal sheet swoon. The gold rushes of the 1850s and 60s turned New South Wales and Victoria into glittering prizes, with escorts rumbling along dusty tracks, wagons groaning under the weight of nuggets and dust worth fortunes. Enter Frank Gardner, the king of the road, a dashing, dark-haired devil with a penchant for planning that would impress a Bond villain, minus the lair, plus a horse. In 1862, at Eugera Rocks, Gardner orchestrated the boldest bailout in colonial history. His gang ambushed an escort carrying £14,000 in gold and cash. That's millions today, pets. They blocked the road with drays, fired from behind boulders, and in a flurry of shots overwhelmed the guards without a single fatality. The irony? Gardner, ever the gentleman, ensured no unnecessary blood. Compare it to today's white-collar heists on crypto exchanges, but with more style and fewer spreadsheets. Gardner's gang, including the charming Ben Hall, divided the loot and scattered, but oh, the gossip. Hall, the gentleman bushranger par excellence, was a widowed stockman turned outlaw after police harassment. His wife ran off with a trooper, leaving him bitter, yet ever courteous. Ben never robbed the poor, shared spoils with sympathizers, and bailed up coaches with apologies. Ladies, pray remain seated. Gentlemen, your purses, if you please. He'd even return watches if begged prettily, or spare mailbags to avoid inconveniencing the post. Modern comparison? He's the bushranger equivalent of a celebrity influencer pulling pranks, daring, dashing, and devastatingly polite, with fans harboring him like groupies at a rock concert. Then there's Captain Thunderbolt, Frederick Ward, who escaped Cockatoo Island prison in a thunderstorm, hence the moniker, and roamed free for nearly 7 years, the longest of any bushranger. A gentleman to his core, Thunderbolt targeted only the wealthy, spared women and children, and once returned a racehorse he'd borrowed after winning bets on it. His holdups were theatrical, leaping from rocks with a flourish, demanding gold with a wink. With Marianne Bugg at his side, our cross-dressing queen from last time, he turned outlawry into a romantic escapade. Irony drips like honey. In a colony built on convict toil, these gentlemen robbed the establishment while embodying the very chivalry the upper crust pretended to possess. And who could forget the Kelly gang's grand gestures? Ned Kelly, armored icon, didn't just rob banks, he held entire towns hostage with panache. At Geraldry in 1879, they locked up the police. Ned dictated his famous 8,000-word manifesto, a Jeremiad against injustice, then bailed up the bank while treating locals to drinks at the hotel. During their Glenruin siege, they hosted a dance for captives, fiddles playing as bullets flew later. The gang in homemade plowshare armor holding up stations with dramatic flair. It's like a Wild West saloon brawl meets Regency house party, complete with hostages charmed into sympathy. These heists weren't mere crimes, they were acts of rebellion laced with romance, fueled by police corruption and selector struggles against squatters. Bushrangers as folk heroes? Utterly. Robbing gold from the crown or banks symbolized sticking it to the man, with sexual undertones in their bold, virile image. Women swooned over them, harboring secrets in bedchambers. Men admired their mateship. Pamphlets painted them as Robin Hoods, ignoring the violence when it suited. Yet the irony. Many ended dangling from the gallows, their gentlemanly ways no shield against the noose. Gold escorts became cat-and-mouse games. Troopers fortified coaches. Bushrangers innovated with ambushes. The Hall from Eugowra funded lavish sprees. Gardner fleeing to Queensland with a mistress, living high until betrayal. Hall's gang pulled dozens of holdups, amassing wealth while evading capture with legendary bushcraft. In this vortex of vice and valor, robbery was elevated to art. Polite demands, selective targets, and post-heist generosity that blurred outlaw and hero. Compare to today's Ocean's 11 capers, slick, sexy, and morally ambiguous. Thus ends our gallop through golden gallantries and highway hijinks, where bushrangers robbed with romance and roguish restraint. But darlings, next we'll uncover the brutal betrayals, police perversions, and hanging day horrors that turned these rakes into relics, positively gallows glamorous.